Hey, it's Chris West from House Calls Vermont, and I am here at 10 Old Stage for another 10 Old Stage Road Deep Energy Retrofit update. Boy, that's a mouthful. I still have the pleasure of having my son Sebastian, one of my children, here helping, and I was pointing out last week that we had a rotten beam in our post and beam. And so today was the day that we started actually excavating that. And we ended up finding, or Sebastian and Jack ended up finding, that there was quite a bit of rot in the beam that was the supporting beam. So here we have, you can see that beam there, that's had a chunk pulled out of it. That's the 8x8 beam, that's the original base support for the frame wall, right, the timber frame. So in the corner here, I had showed you in the last video, we had this beam, right, and that beam was going up, but it was rotten at the bottom, it was sitting on rotten wood. So here is the piece of rotten wood that used to be the bottom. So this was laying like this, and you can see what horrible condition it's in. It's just completely rotten. I can almost stick my fingers into that wood. Of course, it's been there for, 150 years or so, so it's not unusual, especially when it was in contact with the wet ground and probably dealing with quite a bit of moisture. So Sebastian and Jack, they worked together, and they put a supporting column right here on the inside of the wall to hold it up for structure while we're doing this. So when we pull that beam out, that beam and column, that the whole thing wouldn't collapse. That would be kind of a bad thing. And so this is the type of thing you see when you start pulling rotten wood out. It's obviously quite a lot of wood bits, and coming inside, you can see right over here, here's that supporting site-made support that Jack made, and over here we can get a better look at all of the things, as they say in modern society. So the beam used to be right here, and you can even see that they had to cut the mortar, the tenon out of the mortar and tenon in order to get that beam out. So that has been removed. We've created a weld here. So we're going to be bringing in a new piece of wood, and that new piece of wood is going to fill this space, and that will be welded here. So the other one will have the negative cut out of this, and then we'll bolt them together so that it acts as one piece.
Hey Dad, you'll like this. We were looking at, there was some concrete down by the rotted out bit of this beam, right, that was sitting on the floor. And we saw that some people that were retrofitting the house probably in the 1970s or 80s tried to fix the problem of the rotting wood by pouring concrete to accommodate for the lost wood, as if the rot wouldn't spread further.
So that's great. What a find, right? They poured concrete onto the wood in order to, support it. Of course, we know that the right way to do it is what we're doing, or there is an option where you dig out all of the rotten wood and you use an epoxy to fill that. But what Sebastian found is not the supported way. So you see it here. They poured this piece against this piece of wood here. This is the supporting beam, and they poured this concrete in to try to fill the gaps and keep it standing. That was not a successful retrofit, although we are 30 years later, so maybe it was partially successful. It lasted that long. So another thing that we're looking at here today is we have taken off the exterior siding on the north side of the building, and that's this. And I haven't done that up until now because I wanted to wait until we were ready. Now, we haven't taken it all off because power is still running along the bottom and over to that pole. I have been told by a couple of electricians who came to work on this that is one of the longest cable runs to a transformer that they've ever seen. Not a distinction I'd like to continue following, so we're going to get rid of that. One of the things that Sabah noticed when he was pulling this down is that they ran electrical wires between the siding and the so it was a vinyl siding and the paper that was the building wrap, and they did it around this kind of insulation they had. So let's think about this: 1970s and maybe early 1980s. They want to make the house more energy efficient, and so someone says, hey, what we need to do in order to do that is add some insulation to it. So it started out with probably 4 inches of dense pack rock wool between the studs. It's not really studs, but between the framing members of the inside of the timber frame. And then on the outside they put this wrap, and then they added, as you can see here, I'd say it would be generous to call that a 1/2 inch, but approximately a 1/2 inch, maybe even a 1/4 inch of a foil faced rigid insulation. So that little amount of insulation has an insulative value of about R1, because this insulation is R4 per inch and it looks like a 1/4 inch. We could say, if we wanted to be generous, that it's an R2, right? More importantly, this insulation board was put on the outside and was not taped for air sealing or fitted in a way that was going to be anyway beneficiary for air sealing around the gaps of it. And then, even worse, is that it is a foil faced material, meaning that it's completely vapor closed. There's no way moisture is going to be able to dry through that material. And the gaps at the edges where these bits were connecting is certainly not enough to allow for a good amount of drying. That being said, when I first took the interior plaster and lath down, the insulation that was on this wall was wet to the touch. So it wasn't working the way they wanted to, because wet insulation has the same thermal conductivity as water. So we got this down. We will be building out. The idea here is the windows come out. We'll be pulling this window out and that window out. And we will be, I've bought some boneyard windows. Now, what are boneyard windows? Just real quickly, there are some window manufacturers, happens to, in this case to be Windows by Brunel down here in Williston, that have windows that they bought, that somebody bought, but nobody ever picked up. The order was wrong, usually, or something like that, and they call that the boneyard. And those windows are for sale at usually about 50% or more off of the original cost of it. The downsides are you get what's there. You get the size that's there, you get the type of window that's there. Fortunately, these are Marvin windows, so they're not really bad windows. They're just okay windows. They're not like the Wythe windows, which will be delivered on Saturday, that we'll be making a video for the next episode. So we're going to be building this assembly out. We're going to be putting I haven't decided if it's a TJI or a site-built Larson truss, but we're going to put an exterior insulation, get us up to R40, which is the high performance program, and fill that with cellulose. So it's going to be an R40. You're talking something on the order of 10, maybe 11 inches coming out from this wall, you know, like this. And then there'll be a window buck that will be sitting over there and supported by the outside wall, and that'll be the assembly. I'd love to do it with a rigid Gutex type material, but the Timber HP won't be ready in time for me to use it. So other fun stuff that happened this week is that we pulled off the front of the old porch. This porch was added years after the original building was built, and I know that because if we go inside here, I don't know if this window, this door is open. Let's see. Yes, it is. Okay, so and I need a bit of light on that for you to be able to see it. So let me grab my flashlight from my camera, and we'll look up here. So this house was built in 3 phases, maybe more, 4. The original brick part from the 1830s, the wood part, which we have already talked about, the summer kitchen, which is probably from the 1850s or 60s, and then this porch was added at some point in the years after that, and then the garage was added on the other side. But what we see here, right here, is the original gutter, and then on top of that we can see the original shakes. That's a cedar shake roof. So that's a wood roof, which would have been the original roof, with a hand-carved wooden a gutter, which I have a couple of. They're very cool. Planning on cutting some of those up into 1-inch bits and, you know, turning them into artwork and selling them to people, or giving them if people would be interested in that. So this building, this part of the building, which is the porch, was probably originally an open porch, or maybe it was always closed in. But you can see very clearly it had some nice work done. Here we have a nice grooved ceiling. We have some panels here, right? And then sometime later, this thing was added on top. So it originally had a lower panel. You can see that panel, pretty well made. And then in the 1980s or 70s, or maybe even the 50s, someone built it up and added all these windows. I'm not even sure the original porch had windows. It might have just been an open porch for sitting on while people are riding by in their carriages, of course, because it's how people were riding by back then. We also got to look under. It seems as if the entire structure is built on a couple of metal poles that go into the ground. We haven't excavated those poles yet, but that seems to be the structure of the wall, this wall, right? That's furthest away from the house. And that's kind of weird. But the reason we originally did this, and we're still deciding whether we're going to keep the porch at all, was that I needed to get access to this corner. Once again, this is the brick part of the building, and we're going to be attaching this plywood to the building using bolts running through, and then we're going to be hanging 5 inches of insulation, 5.5 inches of polyiso off of this, and that'll fill up that gap there in the buck. And then we'll be doing double strapping, vertical strapping for a rain screen, horizontal strapping pardon me, to hold the shiplap we're going to be using for the exterior treatment. But I do have to wrap the insulation around here onto the brick, and we will be doing that. So I needed to cut away at least 8 inches of this. Ooh, that looks like a pretty crazy rug. I hadn't seen that before. Pardon me. God damn, something in my throat. Because I want to wrap that insulation around there, right? So that's what's going on here at 10 Old Stage. Maybe I'll do the last bit again. And so this is the porch from the outside, and the whole porch, as we were pulling away the bottom material that was covering up the bottom, as you can see here, this has been recently exposed, are these metal poles. There's one there, there's one there, there's one a little further down. You can see them here. That's it. And that's pretty much what's holding up the entire structure of the wall, the outside wall, this wall of the porch. Obviously the other wall is an existing wall of the house. And the reason that we were doing this is we needed to open it up, because over here we have the part of the building that is going, the brick part, see? And we're going to be affixing this plywood onto that. This is a 3/4 inch PT plywood, and we're going to be screwing into the plywood to hold on the polyiso insulation, and I need that to wrap around the corner. So there will also be plywood here, and then I needed this no longer to be have a wall here. You can see the deck. I mean, the porch used to go up to there. I told him I didn't want him to cut that away yet, just because I want the rain protection. But in the end, this ceiling will be, the roof will be cut back to allow for me to put insulation on all the exposed brick and get a nice warm blanket, continuous insulation around the entire thing. So that's what's going on here at 10 Old Stage, and we'll be doing a window install next time, so we will certainly want to stay tuned for that.